Squirrels! So hello, and welcome to another Legends of Runeterra video. My name is Chris, and I am so excited to make this video because yesterday on my stream, I spent quite a while trying to predict the next champions in the upcoming, whatever it be, 6 months or whatever, for, the whole Bandle City expansion and all the different champions that are coming within it. Because normally, and what has happened before, is we normally get some leaks. There normally tends to be voice lines that are data mined or something like that. I don't know if this time Riot has got wise to it and, found a way to keep that a secret. But this time, for the first time, I think, we have no idea what champions are coming to the game. We do not know what is going to be in the game and these different champions. Of course, we can make some educated guesses because you can expect the yodels because the last city is Bandle. The last region is Bandle City, so we're expecting yodels, but we don't have a clue. So I thought I'd take a guess and I'd take a stab at predicting these champions. Now there are some rules that you need to understand to get to, not go crazy at this whole list that I'm about to show you. You need to understand some things and some of the reasoning behind my decisions before I go into it. So, first of all, the first thing is, if you are a yodel, you are going in Bandle City. I've kind of made that decision because otherwise Bandle City doesn't have enough champions. If you stop putting the yodels elsewhere, say for instance you put Poppy in Demacia, who are you putting in Bandle City? So if it is a yodel, it's in Bandle City. Alongside that, I have gone against the dual regions. I know that dual regions could be a thing that come in this upcoming expansion. They very well could be. But in my mind, it doesn't quite make sense to do it yet. Because if Bandle City has a bunch of dual region cards and the other regions don't have a bunch of dual region cards, that's kind of weird, and that will create a very odd dynamic within the game. When other card games have produced like dual region or dual color or whatever cards, they tend to do it at the same time equally across the board. It's not like in Magic the Gathering, blue-black got a bunch of dual colored cards and the rest, had to wait a year. That's not how it worked. They did it at the same time and they pretty much do it at the same time for every other card game, because otherwise you end up in a very weird situation. And so I thought, maybe they will try to avoid that situation and that headache if they can. Because if I was a game designer, I wouldn't want to deal with that headache of the next 6 months. So I've gone against dual regions as well. So there is no dual region in this. I'm treating this like a normal expansion. Also, we don't know how dual region would even work. So trying to predict something when we don't even know the mechanics of how it would work is quite difficult. Like, would all the other champions that aren't Bandle City also be dual region or not? We don't know. So I've gone against dual region. We've gone for a normal, traditional format of, each champion is in one region, and we're going for a normal expansion. And that doesn't mean that dual region won't be in the game at some point. I just think that they might want to, bring it out together as a one. And the final little thing that you have to understand, and please keep this in your mind before you start commenting on this video, is just because a champion, for instance, let's take Poppy, just because Poppy, has a lot of lore connections with Demacia, doesn't mean that that champion will synergize with that region. Now, sometimes I found ways to make it happen, where you can find two champions, one of the Bandle City champions and one of the other region champions, where synergies happens. And we know that they love going for their synergies. We can look at the latest streamer expansion, and you can literally pick out each champion and put them with another one if you wish. So here we have Zilean, Echo, Azir, Aurelia, LeBlanc, Sivir. Now, Lysandra, Talia, and Malphite are kind of the three, because there's always an odd number of champions. So they're kind of the three. But Rek'Sai, of course, with Pyke. Echo we've already done. Renekton goes with Jarvan. Kindred goes with Nasus. And Talia and Malphite and Lysandra are kind of in this fused landmark state. So that's how they like to do things. We know they like to pair champions, so that's what I have done as well. But just because a champion has lore in one region doesn't mean that they will synergize with that region. For instance, Pyke and Rek'Sai have nothing to do with each other lore-wise. They probably don't know each other exist, but they are both monsters that lurk beneath and hunt their prey. That's where they found the connection, and that is where the connections lie, within the sort of characteristics of the characters, rather than the lore of the characters. So keep that in mind as we go forward and I reveal the list to you. And so, my friends, here it is. Here is the list, 100% confirmed for what is going to be the champions in the next upcoming expansions. Now, there's 17 in all. The reasoning behind that is there was 13 for Targon, 15 for Shurima, and if you count one extra for Bandle City needing to synergize with one extra region, and if you count one for Shurima, that should give you 2 more and follow the pattern. So we should, I assume, get 17 champions between, the 3 expansions. And I put a little number by each of them as well to sort of suggest what one I think that they could come out in, but the prediction of which one they will be in is the most tenuous part of all of this, but this is the prediction, and this is what I have gone with, and I think that this is a pretty good list overall. So there's probably some things that you're wondering, there's probably some things that you disagree with already, but let's go in and talk about my reasoning. Well, Senna at the top here is of course our freebie. We know that Senna is coming because it's in the event. At the end of the event it says you can get a champion Senna card, so we literally know Senna is coming. Now this is also color coded, as you might notice, and essentially what this means is each of the Bandle City ones has a color, and that color represents which region they will synergize with. So green is obviously Shadow Isles, this brown is Bilgewater, the purple is Targon, this kind of yellow is Demacia, blue is PNZ because there's too many yellows, pink is Ionia, this yellow is Shurima, and this is Freljord, and this is Noxus. So that's the regions that they're meant to synergize with. But we know we're getting Senna. Senna's the obvious one. Senna's a gimme, and I think that Senna pretty much guaranteed will also come out in the first one, just because it would be very weird to make people pay for a card that they'd get in 6 months. I'm just assuming that it will be in this first one as well. So Senna, a gimme, right? We know that Senna is coming out. So that one's easy. But then we move on to the first of the options, and what I went with here. And so we've got Tristana and Graves. So Tristana, our first Yordle champion in Bandle City, and Graves obviously is our Bilgewater champion, and I've got them synergized together. Why is that? Tristana doesn't have anything to do with Bilgewater. What's that for, Chris? Well, it's to do with actually a couple things. Now, I made this connection already beforehand because Tristana and Graves are both gun people. Tristana is the Yordle gunner. Graves has guns. That's his weapon of choice, and so it makes sense that they have some kind of synergy. But then someone alluded to the fact that maybe I should watch the Yordle cinematic, and guess what happens in that Yordle cinematic? Well, Tristana goes to Bilgewater, and who does she meet? Graves. Graves is right there, and the first thing she says to Graves is along the lines of, "Ooh, nice gun." And then Graves tries to capture her, and watch the Yordle cinematic. It's quite funny, and it's quite a good one, I think. And so, yeah, that's Tristana and Graves. And of all of them, this is the one that I am most confident about. Tristana seems like a champion that, will come out, I think, is, one of perhaps the more important Yordles. And so I could definitely see Tristana being in the game, coming out with Bandle City. And Graves, I think, is one of those champions. Bilgewater doesn't have that many champions left that are actually from Bilgewater. And Graves is quite a popular champion, at least for Riot, because they keep putting him in cinematics. So, it's clear that Riot thinks that Graves is quite like a sort of central character, at least, because they keep making these cinematics and Graves is always in them. So I just thought it makes sense to have Tristana and Graves. They both have guns. They're both characters that I could definitely see them wanting to include pretty soon. And so Tristana and Graves, I think, is probably the one that I'm most confident about. Of all of them, the most confident. But we'll move on to our next little pairing, and that is Kled and Pantheon. And now I know what you're thinking. Kled doesn't have anything to do with Targon. What are you talking about? And you're right, Kled doesn't have anything to do with Targon. What am I talking about? Well, Kled's problem, really, and why I didn't go for a Kled synergy with Noxus, is actually more to do with Annie. Now, the reason Annie is in here is because of the unintentional leak that I talked about before. And Annie, didn't really have much to do with Kled. I tried to ask around in my chat, does Annie and Kled, is there anything you can find between them? And we all kind of went, no, not really, there isn't much there. And maybe there is some small things, you know, but whatever. We decided that there wasn't really enough to find synergy between Annie and Kled. And Annie, of course, the card that was sort of leaked is called Burning House. It's a 1-mana landmark from Noxus. Burning House, Noxus. Annie? It seemed like something that very much could be the case that Annie would be included. We don't know necessarily if it would be for this expansion. It's possible that, you know, they could have cards coded into the game that would be for, like, the expansion after Bandle C. It's very possible, so there isn't no guarantee that Annie would be in there. But at least we have a clue that Annie could be coming out, so I kind of went with the idea that, okay, let's assume it's Annie. And then Kled didn't really fit. So then I was thinking, okay, what about Kled does fit? Where can I find a home for Kled? And the answer was Pantheon, because Kled is a warrior yordle, and Pantheon is a warrior. And again, Targon, like Bilgewater, doesn't have too many champions left that are actually from Targon. So I think it would perhaps make sense to include Pantheon in this little expansion and get one of the Targon champions that is from Targon left. And, you know, they have this warrior synergy between them. And so you can assume, you know, and you can start to make these connections, these keywords, you know, warrior keyword. I don't know what it would do. Maybe something about killing so many opponents, you know, kind of Fiora-esque, if you will. But something in that sense. And this would obviously be your mid-range, your Bandle City mid-range deck to go with a Targon mid-range deck. Something that I think both regions would probably be crying out for and might, you know, struggle a bit to find. Targon, you know, does have some mid-range elements like Daybreak, but it's never really been great. So I think Pantheon, Kled, makes some sense. The warrior people of both regions. Now, next up, we do have a synergy within the region that, you know, Poppy is normally dealing with, and that is Demacia. But I only did that because I could actually find a synergy between them. And basically, Poppy... What do you say about Poppy? How did I find a connection between Poppy and Galio? Well, aside from the fact that, you know, they're both Demacian lore-wise, they're both protectors. And this is what I would see the synergy between them being, is protectors of Demacia and sort of the lore-wise, but protector, something to do with that, you know, defenders or something like that. You know, we've seen, you know, the word defender is a word used in Magic the Gathering for, you know, cards that can't attack, but can block. And, you know, maybe we could see something similar with here, where we have this defensive, like, put up your wall type synergy between Poppy and Galio. Now, Galio is a really interesting one. And let me explain why. Because Galio has a card in the game already that kind of hints that maybe they designed Galio already, or maybe they were in the process. Let me go back to Runeterra, and I'll explain what I mean. So there's already a card that hits a Galio, but before that, I just want to talk about something else, and that is they have done this before, and they did it with Sejuani. And, you know, people who've been around a while kind of theorized that Sejuani got changed at some point. That Sejuani was meant to come out on initial release, but she actually came out with Bilgewater, and the reason why is because you look at some of the cards that came out in the initial release, like Scarthane Stefan, they mentioned Sejuani. They have Sejuani's name in the game before Sejuani was out, which is kind of rare. You know, that hasn't really happened with any other champions, but it did here. And there are, you know, cards like Shatter as well that are all just kind of clues for Sejuani. And so a lot of people have theorized that Sejuani was meant to synergize with this survive damage and maybe go with Vlad or something like that in that kind of realm. Because these cards kind of came out without a champion so much. Which is kind of weird. It's kind of the only time that that's happened, aside from one card, which came out in Demacia that is unlike really any other card, and that's Stony Suppressor. Now, Stony Suppressor doesn't, you know, mention Galio directly, but it's kind of a clue. You know, it's kind of a bit of a clue if you know anything about Galio. And Stony Suppressor is unlike any card. No other card does anything like this. You know, Stony Suppressor came out as one of those, I think, like, cards, you know, when they do, like, 1 or 2 cards for each of the other regions that don't get champions. I'm pretty sure Stony Suppressor was one of those. And so it could be possible that what happened was they were going to bring out Galio, like, sometime around then, maybe for Shurima even, but then decided against it for whatever reason. You know, maybe they thought there was a better synergy or something else elsewhere. But perhaps they've been sitting on Galio for a while, and it has, you know, this kind of thing, some kind of spell suppression or whatever, I don't know. But it's very possible that that could be the case. That, you know, they did design a full sort of set base cards for Galio, but then kind of, you know, just delayed his release. So I think that Galio really has a decent chance, and the little seed of a clue was there. And if this is right, by the way, I am just a genius. So Galio and Poppy I have as a synergy. Now this next one is probably the one that I'm least confident about, I would say, of all of them, and that is Corki and Caitlyn. But you can see there's a question mark there as well, because I really didn't know. This one was very difficult, because essentially, when you're looking for Piltover and Zorn synergies, there are plenty of good Yordles to pick from. Plenty of Yordles already have synergies with Piltover and Zorn and find themselves in Piltover and Zorn. But I went with Corki because, again, of that cinematic. You know, and looking back, that cinematic might have been a clue that Bandle City was the next region that we all kind of like brushed over, but I went with Corki over the others just because he's in the cinematic and the others aren't. And so maybe they see him as a more central character to Bandle City than the likes of Ziggs or Rumble, who are two other good options that you see on in this list. And it's very possible that that could be the case, but maybe Riot thinks that Corki is more sort of essential to Bandle City than those other options I just mentioned. And so I was thinking about Corki, and I was looking for synergies. It's actually quite hard, you know, because Corki is very Piltover, like he's really Piltover in terms of design of a champion. But he's kind of this patroller with his flying machines, and so that was the word that got me. Patroller. He's a patroller. He you know, patrols the skies of Piltover, and Caitlyn is, you know, basically a patrol officer, for lack of a better word. And so I think that there could be something there again, about, you know, kind of surveying the area, patrolling the area, looking out for things, you know, getting out, you know, keeping things out there. And you know, you could do a lot with something like that kind of idea, you know, trying to uncover darkness. Maybe it's some kind of information gathering, you know, archetype or something like that. That would be quite a cool archetype, I think, you know, where you look at your opponent's hand and, like, you know, you do all of that kind of stuff. Something that I think probably will be added into the game eventually. And so I think it's a tough one though, because Corki, again, you know, with like finding a synergy with a Piltover and Zorn champion, like there's so many options, like it could really be a lot of different things. So this one I'm probably the least confident about, but I think that there could be something there between them. Now we have Yumi and Ionia, and finding a synergy for an Ionian champion from the Bandle City champions wasn't as easy, but Yumi seemed like the obvious choice. That she seemed like she would have the most connections to Ionia and, you know, the whole kind of magic. And initially I asked, well, who is like similar in magic to like Yumi and Ionia? And the answer I got from my chat was, well, literally anyone and everyone in Ionia, pretty much. So that's why we started with literally anyone. But then eventually we settled on Ivan. And why did we settle on that? Well, apparently, and I don't play League, but apparently they both have sort of movement stopping things, and in their descriptions of like their abilities and about them, it uses the word either roots or it's something like that. It's like roots. It roots them to a spot. They both have those words crop up quite a few times. It might not be exactly roots, but I can't think of the word. But it's something like that, and that made me think, oh, well, you can make an archetype out of that straight away. You've got an archetype right there. And, you know, slowing movement speed of things, and they also both care for other things as well. You know, they both are companions, you know, they support their companions and allies. And so, you know, people were like, Yumi would make sense as kind of a support, elusive type thing. So I think the synergy with Ionia obviously makes sense, because Ionia is the support elusive region. So that makes sense. I think Ivan as well has that support element to him. They both use the word, I think it's roots, in like their abilities quite a lot, and so I think that there could be quite a bit of synergy between them, and so Ivan to me made the most sense. And yeah, I think that this is one that again makes some sense. I think it makes some sense. Now here we come to Vex and Amumu. Now Vex obviously is an interesting one because we don't know much about Vex, but Vex is coming out in September, and that's why I've put Vex in the second expansion, because I mean maybe they'll release her before they do in League, but I would have thought that they'd wait, personally, but maybe I'm wrong. So I put Vex in the second one. Obviously, we don't know a lot about Vex and what Vex does, but I do think if you're releasing a new champion, Yordle champion in League, it's probably likely that Vex will be one of the champions that comes out. And you'll see that Amumu here doesn't have a corresponding color. Now, actually, if I could go back on this, I actually would change Vex to synergize with Amumu rather than Shadow Owls. We know that Vex is a Shadow Owls-ish Yordle, but there wasn't, like, the more I think about it, I can't really see Senna synergizing with Vex, and I wouldn't be shocked if Senna is just kind of there as her own sort of thing. It's kind of like a bit of a continuation of the Ruination event that doesn't necessarily fit with the Bandle City theme, because when you think of Bandle City, and you think a lot of these champions that we've included, you know, they kind of fit more of the theme, like, obviously, Amumu, like Nunu and Willump, like, you know, maybe Graves is obviously a bit of a stupid character. You know, they kind of fit perhaps more of the theme than Senna does. Senna seems like a bit of a, you know, not really like anything to do with Yordles, really. You don't think Senna and you think, oh, connection to Yordles, really, do you? So, anyway. Vex I could see with Amumu, this kind of curse thing. I can almost guarantee what Amumu's abilities would be, but Amumu to me makes sense as the Shurima champion, because he fits with the kind of Yordle theme. There is like a debate about whether Amumu is a Yordle himself, so maybe he even ends up in Bandle City, I don't know. But I think they would have kept Amumu in Shurima, and I think that Amumu would synergize pretty well with Vex. If we go for that kind of curse thing, you know, if Vex is this kind of magical, gloomy Yordle, then maybe she puts curses on things, and Amumu obviously has his cursed whole thing going on. That's kind of its whole story. So I could definitely see a sort of curse synergy between Vex and Amumu, and I think that that would make a lot of sense as well. So Vex really should be in Shurima Yellow, I guess, in terms of where I think she will synergize. But we come to Na and Nunu and Willump, our next pair. And this one is one that fits really well. And this is, I think, important because Na had, you know, growing into this big monstrosity thing. I think that this just makes sense. The synergy between Na and Nunu and Willump. You start small. You start with these small things that then if you know, achieve a condition, turn into these massive things. You know, both Na and Nunu and Willump could both do that. You know, you have to start with Nunu, but then the level up, you get Willump. You know, Na, you start off with a little Yordle thing, and then it grows into a massive, monstrous beast. I could see that for both of these, and I think that that would just make complete sense. And Na already obviously has lore with Freljord, and I think that that's just an obvious synergy. Finally, we come to Annie. Now, as I've already mentioned, Annie is, you know, I'm using the clue of the burnt house that Annie could be there. And Vagar or Viegar or Vinegar or however you say this name, because people seem to not know. So I'm just going to go with Vagar. But if that's wrong, then honestly, I don't really care. But Vagar and Annie. And what I could see is synergy between these is this kind of unrestless soul. You know, they've got this tormented soul kind of thing going on. And I could definitely see there being some synergies there. And again, people I think would go, well, no, Vagar should synergize with Mordekaiser. Mordekaiser, it has to be Mordekaiser. Things like that, you know. And again, I don't think that they care about the lore when it comes to picking like synergies between champions. You know, I think they could probably find something better for Mordekaiser. And I think that this would make sense as like a tormented soul type thing. You know, where they try and use something like a keyword like that, like torment or something would be the keyword between Annie and Vagar. I think it's a neat synergy that would be really cool and would work pretty well. And I think that it just makes sense. And pretty much all of these make sense. Now, that doesn't mean that they're going to be right, but I do think that quite a few of them would make sense and that I could definitely see them working in something like this. I really do like, particularly the Tristana and Graves, and as soon as I saw the cinematic, I was like, that's a home run. I'm very confident about this. Obviously, Senna is a given. We'll see how many we get, obviously, of these champions. I'd like to know what you all think of my list, and whether, you know, what you disagree with, what you agree with, what you could see, what different ones you change. You know, some of them I'm a lot less sure about, like the Piltover and Zorn kind of synergy one. Could really be anything. What Senna is doing in here is kind of weird. Like, I don't know what, like, Yordle would necessarily synergize with Senna. Oh, I should mention, I put Senna in Shadow Isles. Why have I done that? Why didn't I put Senna in Demacia, Chris? Why is Senna in Shadow Isles? That doesn't make any sense. Well, personally, I put Senna in Shadow Isles for a couple of reasons. One, Shadow Isles doesn't have that many champions. Shadow Isles needs all the champions it can get. Senna, no one would have a problem if Senna is in Shadow Isles. Thumbs up. Number 2, there is already a Senna card in the game. If you're looking at it from a game designer's point, it might be less confusing to players if you have these 2 cards that are called Senna, but that are in different regions, so there's no way that you can confuse them. Thumbs up. And thirdly, no one's going to complain if Senna's in Shadow Isles. And again, they need all the champions they can get. So that's why I put Senna in Shadow Isles. She could be in Demacia. It wouldn't shock me either. Of course, she is from Demacia. But I just think, you know, if they... Like, if I was looking at it from their perspective, you need to get like 15 or 16 champions into every region if you want every champion in the game. Some of those regions, like Demacia, already have like 15 champions, 16 champions. So they don't need any extra ones. Shadow Isles has like 7, 8, and is already running out. And, you know, they're just going to have, you know, they keep throwing in ones that aren't from Shadow Isles, like Nocturne or whatever. So if you can get one that people will be like, yeah, that makes sense, and put it in Shadow Isles, why not? Why not just put it in Shadow Isles? So that is my list. So you're welcome. Enjoy all the spoilers that I've just given to you, because this list will be 100% right. If this list is 100% right, then I deserve like a medal. Because that would be incredibly crazy to get all of this right, because of course there's still so many champions to choose from in terms of the champions we're going to get. But yeah, that's going to be it. So thank you so much for watching this. I hope you enjoyed it. I really enjoyed doing this list, and this is the kind of, you know, things that, you know, we get up to on my stream, so you can come out and hang out. Honestly, I might even try like designing some of these, because, you know, and seeing how close I can get in terms of the actual design of the champions as well, because that I think would be pretty neat as well. But I'm going to keep this list up and see how close I can get. So yeah, thank you so much for watching, and have a really nice day.